Well, we are met here to commemorate the greatest demonstration in British political history, and indeed the greatest demonstration in global political history, because that day began, as many of us remember, with demonstrations on the other side of the globe, and those demonstrations followed the sun as it rose around the globe on that day. But it would be entirely wrong. In fact, it is entirely unnecessary to meet simply to commemorate that demonstration. If we had not demonstrated then, if we had never demonstrated in the last 10 years, if we were met here for the first time, as we met just after the attack on Twin Towers in this very room for the first time, if this were again our first meeting, it would be necessary now to found a Stop the War coalition. It would be necessary because the structure of our world, the disposition of the power of the major states, is making war a permanent reality in the age in which we live. The United States is a weakening economic power. It has challenges on a global scale that it did not have a generation ago. It does not do reconstruction, as Condoleezza Rice once said, in the way that it did at the end of the Second World War. But this economically weakening giant is still overwhelmingly militarily superior. American military spending is equal to the spending of the 10 largest military powers in the world that come after it, all put together. It is still a colossus when it comes to the stick. And that gives it a propensity to military violence, unprecedented even in the last 100 years, that have been full of a propensity by the military powers, by the great powers, by the imperial powers, to use military violence. So even after they have left Afghanistan, if they leave Afghanistan, even after Iraq, even after Libya, even if Mali ends soon, they will still be about the business of trying to insist that the already overwhelmingly military powerful, that the super rich, that the huge corporations gain their way in the world by the constant deployment and redeployment of military force. We stand for the very opposite of those things. That policy will destroy democracy, as it has already destroyed democracy, both in its heartlands and in the countries that it attacks in the last 10 years. But we stand for democracy. It will lead to the impoverishment, both of the people in the countries that it attacks and to the ordinary working people in the countries whose welfare services and conditions of life are robbed to pay for the military might which is deployed in those countries. But we stand for welfare provision and for working people having a decent life, having a decent education, having a health service that's worth a damn. It will, as it has, generated racism, because you cannot use the argument that some people in some parts of the globe practice a religion which is uniquely backward and medieval, which is uniquely oppressive of women, which is uniquely undemocratic. You cannot put that argument as a justification for bombing people in Mali or in Baghdad or in Kabul and not say the same things about their co-religionists in Birmingham or Bradford or the East End of London. So we stand for freedom of speech, and part of freedom of speech is freedom of religious speech. I am not a religious person, but I will defend the right of religious people to have their view, to practice their religion as they see fit. I will not allow, without resistance, to happen in this country, a law to be passed as it has been in France, which tells Muslim women that they cannot wear certain forms of headdress and makes it illegal for Muslims to pray in the street. We are not having that here. We are not having that here. So had we done nothing in the last 10 years, had we not done what we did 10 years ago, it would be necessary now to start that work. It would be a decade late, but it would be necessary to start that work. And in that 10 years, they've responded to the pressure from us. Let's be clear. The drone wars are about making sure that there are no body bags of American and British and European troops coming back from the theatres of war. That's what the drone wars are about. Now, if they move to drone wars, we move after the drone wars. That's why the Stop the War Coalition is calling on the 27th of April to have a demonstration at the Leicestershire base, which has now been opened in this country and which is directly in the business of bringing death by stealth from the air to people who will never ever see it coming in countries thousands of miles away. They've moved to that, we are moving after them. And every time they move, we will pursue them. We will not let the argument stand. We will not drop the argument. We will not stop mobilising. We will not stop marching. We will not stop demonstrating. That is the most important thing that we can say today. That as long as they are addicted to war, we are addicted to protest against those wars. That is our business. I'll finish on this. There is one thing as significant as the war on terror, which has happened in the 10 years since we began marching. That is the outbreak of the global recession in 2008. To their addiction to war has been added their addiction to defending the profits of the banks and the finance houses and the corporations at the cost of the living standards of ordinary working people. Sami Ramadani quite rightly said, there is no anti-imperialism without democracy, and there is no struggle for democracy without anti-imperialism. But there is no struggle against war without defending the welfare state, the trade union rights, and the strength of the labour movement in this country. That's why many of us have been involved in calling a People's Assembly against austerity in the summer, and we hope that as long as this system shows us the face of war and austerity, we will show in opposition an anti-war movement and an anti-austerity movement which brings together in unity the kind of forces, the only kind of forces that working people really have, their strength in numbers and their capacity to organise. That is what this movement has in the end always been about. The struggle for success in the working class movement is the struggle for unity. Without unity, we cannot win. In unity, we can take down the warmongers and the profiteers. Stay with us, stay organised, and keep fighting.